So it was an exciting day today, Wednesday, July 31st, in the year of our Lord 2024. We are at the start of 2024 fall football camp, baby. Let's do it. All right, well, it's time to finally talk some football. We're a month away from week one against the Penn State Nittany Lions at Milan Puskar Stadium to open the season. So let's talk about it on tonight's show here. We got to hear from the head coach himself, Neal Brown, in his sixth year at the helm of the West Virginia football program. Kind of break down a little bit of some of the things that he said during his media press conference today. It was really more of just like a heat acclimation day. You hear that a lot, especially in my neck of the woods here in southwestern Pennsylvania. And for a lot of high schools, there's heat acclimation week, it seems like. But I guess at least just for today, the players themselves were doing more just in t-shirt and shorts, and spider pads is what Neal Brown called it. And also, I kind of want to talk about my 5 things that I hope that West Virginia works on during this fall camp to be in prime position for a good start to this 2024 season. So let me just backtrack before I get into those 2 things, because I think I need to readdress this one last time before there's no more additions of players. The transfer portal and adding to this roster are closed for 2024. We're pausing on class of 2025 high school recruiting, all of those things. So back at the end of, when the clock hit 0 on the Duke's Mayo Bowl 2023, in my recap, I gave you really a list of things that Neal Brown and staff needed to do between now and today to put himself in the program in its best position to succeed, not only in 2024, but beyond as possible. So number 1 was retain the indispensable list. And West Virginia, in tandem with Country Roads Trust, did absolutely that. It was the best year of the last 3 years since the evolution of the transfer portal and NIL have come onto the scene. Just really 3 years, y'all. I mean, I can't believe it. Seems like it's been around all forever because of how much we talk about it, 365 days a year. But it was just July 1st, 2021 that became a thing, with players being able to profit off their name, image, and likeness, and the boom of collectives and pay for play came onto the scene. So retaining the indispensable list in tandem with Country Roads Trust. Thank you, fans. That is Mountaineer Nation's hard work right there. And I can't believe the world in which we live in, which we have to pay for tickets, we have to pay for parking, we have to pay for concessions, we have to pay for merchandise, all of the things that we as fans have to pay for. Now we also have to pay the players' salaries. So by doing so, that enabled a Garrett Green to come back, a C.J. Donaldson to come back, an Aubrey Burks to come back. You name it. All of the star players, Wyatt Milam, Country Roads Trust worked hard to keep those players on this West Virginia team for 2024. They obviously won the Duke's Mayo Bowl, capping off just their 19th 9-win or more season in program history this past year, the best year of the Neal Brown era, matching the 2019 or the 2018 season when Dana Holgerson left. Replenish depth and upgrade in the transfer portal. As for an upgrade, yet to be seen. We'll have to see. But, especially at cornerback, adding in 5 new corners, adding a right tackle as a backup in Xavier Bosley on the interior defensive line, or just defensive line as a whole, kind of. Didn't necessarily happen, but with TJ Jackson at the defensive end position, you could say so. I had as one of my notes, Zach Frazier obviously getting drafted, Beanie Bishop and or Doug Nestor getting drafted. That was a miss. You did get Zach Frazier getting drafted into the second round of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but Beanie Bishop and Doug Nestor did not get drafted, meaning West Virginia doesn't have that data point, doesn't have that statistic that it can use in its transfer portal recruiting and its high school recruiting, so on and so forth. But here's the good news, at least on the note of Beanie Bishop. Beanie Bishop apparently is practicing with the first teamers for the Pittsburgh Steelers at slot corner. So even though he's not getting drafted, Beanie just continues to prove people wrong. And if he has a great first year in Pittsburgh, then West Virginia can tout that. Finding another gem in the 2024 high school recruiting class. They did on the early signing day, bringing in 4-star wide receiver Day Farmer, a flip from Central Florida. Making a defensive philosophy schematic change with the bandit position and going to more of a 3-4 look. This is my thoughts and opinion here. Not doing so. They're sticking with this 3-3-5. I don't care what you call a spur, what you call the spear. It's a 3-3-5. 3 down linemen predominantly, 3 linebackers, a middle and 2 outside linebackers, and 5 defensive backs. Yes, Aubrey Burks can come up and play in the box. That's fine, but he's not a linebacker. He's a safety. So we'll just have to see if it's same old with this defense schematically and philosophically, or will Jordan Leslie in this defense bring more pressure, like I talked about in at the end of the Duke's Mayo Bowl, having much better success rushing the quarterback, affecting passing as well as getting sacks. So put a pin in that for as we talk about this season unfolding. And then pulling a big fish or two out of the 2025 high school recruiting class. I'm also going to say this was kind of a hit and miss. You have brought in 2 4-star recruits, DeAndre Desenor, the top really offensive target, a 4-star running back, top 200 player in the country at running back out of Florida, and also a defensive tackle, Amir Leonard John Charles. I love this, over 300 pounds on the defensive line, bringing him in from Tennessee as a 4-star player. But West Virginia really, unfortunately, between the end of last season to today, has missed on a ton of high-quality talent. First and foremost, to my mind, Deshaun Burnett, 4-star outside linebacker from Pittsburgh. Also, Wilnerson Telemake, 3-star defensive end from Florida, picking Wisconsin. Burnett picked Penn State. Grant Bierman, 4-star middle linebacker from Ohio, picked Purdue, as well as 4-star cornerback from Columbus, Ohio, Dwayne Galloway, picking Purdue. Cam Strong, 3-star corner from Anderson, South Carolina, picking NC State, probably because of all of the other defensive backs that the staff had recruited and received commitments for prior to Strong committing to NC State. Rashad Johnson, previous visitor, 4-star, could maybe by the end of the cycle be a 5-star. Safety from Bushnell, Florida, going to Georgia. So makes sense there. Nick Moore, we chronicled that story. Weird, seemed like West Virginia was going to be getting a commitment when he announced it. Paused about an hour before his announcement this summer. I think this was in late June. And what do you know? Moves up and wants to take his official visit to Tennessee the next week or two. He picks the Volunteers out of his home state. So definitely some backdoor stuff happening there with the Volunteers to get Nick Moore to commit. Donta Simpson, 3-star defensive lineman from Hollywood, Florida, picking Maryland. And then Carson Lawrence, also a 4-star safety commit to Vanderbilt. West Virginia had him on campus, that big June 2nd visit weekend over the summer with a ton of different defensive backs and other players who committed out of that weekend, but still has not necessarily flipped. So it's not to say that everything is lost on these players. I think there's still more to become, but I think, if the NIL component, not to talk about for tonight's show, but there might be some players, also Samari Reed, a 4-star wide receiver from Coconut Creek, Florida, picking Ole Miss. Some players who are still in a bit of a wait-and-see mode with this program. Talked about the struggles of the 2024 high school recruiting class in bringing in quality instead of quantity. Given what in the summer of 2023, all that the coaches had to deal with from rumors of, potentially Neal Brown being fired if they didn't beat Pitt and started out the season 1-2. Instead, it seems like there is, is not as strong of a push. So you did have some wins. You did still even have some high-quality 3-star commits over this, cycle. Because, again, 75 to 80% or more of this 2025 high school recruiting class is already in the bank. It's already committed. So we'll have to see if West Virginia can meet or exceed expectations for this season, which I'll talk in a video very, very soon. Then maybe we get a couple of these players to flip, perhaps. But for now, they're committed elsewhere. So, time to put that to bed. I wouldn't give West Virginia's off season necessarily an A grade. I also wouldn't necessarily give it, a C or lower. So I think somewhere in between, a B range up to perhaps a B plus even for this off season up to this point of what's all happened from the end of the Duke's Mayo Bowl until today. So let's get to today. The Neal Brown's press conference is available on YouTube if you want to actually sit down and listen to the entire 30 minutes of it. I would just point you to WVU Sports' YouTube channel, and you can go and watch it in totality. I'm going to pull some nuggets from it, not necessarily word from word, but what I will take away from the things. I have about 5-6 points here. Number one, he really praised the strength, conditioning, nutrition, support staff, academic support staff, so on and so forth. And I think now Neal Brown has his blueprint installed. The foundation is built. 6 years, almost, as long as Dana Holgorsen has head coached at West Virginia, the entire, I don't want to say this, think tank for Neal Brown has now been installed with his fingerprints all over this program of what he wants to do from a strength and conditioning and nutrition standpoint to bring in some players who maybe are necessarily works in progress, who are diamonds in the rough, who they think that at 17, 18 years old when they bring them in as high school seniors and get them to commit, that by the time that they're 22, 23 years old, fourth or fifth year players, that they will be, physically built up to where they envision them, 4 years down the road. So I think you can see that with some of the players, looking now 6 years in of how Neal Brown and staff recruited them as high school juniors for their 2020 class and beyond. And now the maturation process that you have a whole bunch of 4th, 5th, and 6th-year players all over the field at different positions. So most importantly, I think from the entire conversation were the injury updates, and I think just to go through each of them real quick for this video. Knowing that C.J. Donaldson, Jaheim Joseph, and Cole Taylor were all full goes, very important. I didn't even know necessarily about Jaheim Joseph. Hasn't really necessarily been talked about much over this summer, but C.J. Donaldson, I think, it played in the spring game. Cole Taylor didn't, but to know that he's a full go, great to go. We can confirm now about Corey McIntyre. The Huddy Tuddy on Twitter was right. Back in spring camp, Corey McIntyre potentially tearing his ACL, suffering some sort of significant injury. He's probably down for the entire year, using a medical red shirt because he already has used his red shirt. So big, I don't want to say big loss, but from a depth perspective, looking forward into 2025-26, not having Corey McIntyre, really a player that Neal Brown and staff had been excited for. So that's a loss from that aspect. Jacoby Spells, wow, this was probably the biggest news of the day from an injury health perspective. Jacoby Spells, limited participant, but they are hopeful that he's back for Penn State. Wow, that's huge. I mean, the rumor is on him, it was, going to potentially be weeks. So to know that, and I think in the video was the man workout, I forget what it was. It was over Sunday or Monday or so, that they were having a competition of all these different physical activities between the groups on the team, and seeing Jacoby Spells in that video, I was like, oh great, well if he's doing this, then he's probably practicing. So that's great. Asani Redwood also being a limited participant, guy who's potentially vying for second to third string reps, who now that he's in his third year into the program, we got to see something out of Asani Redwood by this point in his career. The sad one is really Kyle Altuner. Right up there with Day Farmer is the most highly coveted prospect out of the 2024 high school recruiting class. A guy who probably will push Landon Livingston for that starting center job for next year. But now, due to the injury, and if he plays any snaps this season, it all kind of depend. Definitely that leg up initially. So a little more position / job security for Landon Livingston, given the injury to Kyle Altuner. Sorry to see Brandon Yates will hold that center starting position down, but now, like I said in my video, I think it was just a day or two ago about Landon Livingston, like, ball up, man. This is your moment. There's nobody really necessarily behind you if Brandon Yates underperforms or gets hurt. So need him to be able to snap well. Unfortunate situation to hear about the medical redshirt of Mo Hamilton and Jai Favris. Saw some pictures, I think like some international travel at the late end of the semester last year with Jai Favris, and I think he was still either in a walking boot or something. So the physical toll of just playing football, just a guy who was kind of, I feel like, undersized coming out of high school internationally. Really, all that he was just about going to give you for this team this year would be, special teams or third string reps. So a guy that's in his 5th year of eligibility, even did have another COVID year. That why wouldn't you want to stay if you could have free education and spend 6 years in college in Morgantown? Why wouldn't you? So very interesting situation there for Jai Favris. Mo Hamilton, I did talk about on my last video about Mo Hamilton switching to the defensive line from the offensive line. A little curious, a little suspect about this because, you don't know necessarily about these injuries because there aren't medical / injury reports in college football, much to my chagrin and probably many people who care about what happens in Vegas. So the unknowing about these injuries, very curious. Jai Favris, Mo Hamilton, were they potentially the last cuts on the team to get under that 85 scholarship limit for today? I don't know. I guess we'll never necessarily know, but at least the way it was presented by Neal Brown, it was due to medical redshirting. So do we see them end up potentially at other programs? I know West Virginia's in on a defensive line recruit, Brandon Caesar, from Mo Hamilton's high school in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. How does that potentially affect the relationship between West Virginia and a player like Caesar, knowing that one of his high school teammates was kind of forced out? I'm just speculating here, but it's just very, very odd. So move on from that note. More depth than West Virginia's ever had. I would argue that point. I love where West Virginia's at the ones, especially on the offensive side of the ball. At the 2s and 3s, perhaps. I think more so Neal Brown was talking about leadership, culture, attitude. There are a lot of guys on this roster who, as I just mentioned, are in their 4th, 5th, 6th years. Look at that offensive line specifically with Yates, Hubbard, Nick Malone, all guys who are 6th year. You don't see that. You're never going to have this again in college football with guys who are this old into their playing careers still playing against 18 to 22-year-olds. So, having said all that, there is some depth. I'm not going to argue necessarily with that, but I just think from where this program was, even 2019 to 2021, it's different. It's so much different. Not necessarily as different, I feel like, from last year, but you had a bridge year in 2022 with getting out some of the last bad eggs, some me, not we players on the program. And now I think like this culture attitude is fully established, and it comes out, from Neal Brown. So he didn't necessarily acknowledge any true freshmen who he thought that could be potential players who see the field. I have 3 for you. I think Day Farmer, I think Zay Jennings, and I think Obina Onwuka. Those are my 3. I'll talk about Farmer a little bit more, but those are guys who, anything can happen due to injuries, but even just some sub packages, even just some, if by some possible feasible way West Virginia is up in some games and can rest its starters into the fourth quarter, I think you'll see, or some sub packages here or there, or just resting load management some starters, Jennings and Onwuka being those couple on the outside on the defensive side of the ball. Assistant position coaches coaching players not on the two deep. I think when you read between the lines on that, now Brown's talked about this, but I don't think we as fans necessarily always bring this conscious to mind. I think that Neal Brown and his assistant coaches have worked to the point where really the 53-man roster, maybe even fewer than that. So you're too deep on your offense and defense and your special teamers are the guys that they're really concentrated on day-to-day practices. It's the ancillary players, 3 deep or beyond, that are part of their development program is what he refers to. What does that look like? I've never been to practice. I've never, haven't seen those things, but he has talked about them before, so I got to take him at face value on that they're just getting reps. Then I don't know if they have separate practices from the starters, either in the indoor facility and the starters are in the on Milan Puskar Stadium or outside there. They have multiple fields that they can use. So are these guys who are just getting bigger, faster, stronger, learning the playbooks, learning the signals, the calls, and then just developing better at their position. I look at right now as a Khalil Wilkins, probably not going to see the field at all this year, but he already missed his entire senior year of high school football. Do you really want him to miss out on 2 years of gameplay? No. So how can you simulate that in the development program as closely as possible to what he would see out on Milan Puskar Stadium on Mountaineer Field when he's in his second, third, fourth years? So that's what I mean. Very interesting. I don't think that necessarily that West Virginia was afforded to be able to do that, especially 2019, 2020 with COVID, even into 2021. But now they're being able to do that, being able to trust the starters, work with them more so, and the developmental guys. You got to be upfront and honest with them during the recruiting process, and just they got to put their nose to the grind of understanding that they might not see the field entirely for an entire year. And people, I get it. I mean, I would understand if I wouldn't even want a red shirt, understanding that I'm a true freshman. If you were, a baller in high school, you're going to be playing at Division I level. Yes, you want to compete. Yes, you want to play. But you got to prove it. So how that all works out, I'd love to know more about that, the actual specifics of that developmental program. But him talking about that, and I think that this is a perfect year to do so, and I'll touch on that point here in my 5 points. Also, communication, using more technology, iPads. Okay, I think we got a taste of this in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. More headset communications, quarterback to head coach, linebackers to defensive coordinators, and other assistant coaches being on the field. So very interesting from that perspective of how they're using technology and increasing their communications, and hopefully it pays off. But, West Virginia only has, I think, 5 road trips all year. So how do the signals work in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and Tucson, Arizona? Lubbock, Texas, too, are what important to me. Do we have a New England Patriots type of sabotage on the communications when that comes? Who knows if we'll ever get to know that from sideline reporters during the broadcast. So those are some of my biggest takeaways from Neal Brown's press conference. Love to hear what yours were if I missed anything. Leave your comments here on YouTube, and if you're liking this video so far, smash that like button. I'd love more Mountaineer fans across YouTube to see this video. And if you're not already a subscriber, please do so, because this is the thick of it, y'all. This is when we're going to get into it. Going to be having a prediction show and talking about, everybody wants to know what's your thoughts overall on their record for this year. How's West Virginia going to do against Penn State, Pitt, so on and so forth. So going to be bringing that show for you before we get into previewing Penn State the week prior. And then I like to bring you a Sunday show after the game, kind of let those thoughts from a game, marinate for about 12 hours before I get on. Reaction shows after a game is immediately over. Not necessarily into that. Got to let kind of sink in, bake in, and talk about it on Sunday. So I'll make sure to do that for you. So that's what you can expect from me this year. Preview show. If there's some extracurricular, ancillary type of topic, I like to bring that to you during the middle of the week, and then an after show on Sundays. So keep it here on my channel. So what are my 5 things that I'm hoping that West Virginia accomplishes in fall camp? And I'm going to try and get this video under 45 minutes. I don't think I'm going to go 20 more minutes. But number 1, really, who are your starters? And really, there's about 4 position groups, I feel like, that you need to know who are the first 11 on offense trotting out, who are your first 11 on defense trotting out, and who are your special teams starters. So at first, wide receiver, I think we need to know that. I think we have a general idea who about the top 5, 6 are, but there's not a huge difference, I feel like, between guys like Hudson Clement and Traylon Ray, or Preston Fox and Rodney Gallagher. It's opportunity. So who's going to get the first cracks at the opportunity? If they don't capitalize on the opportunity, I think Neal Brown's going to have a quick leash this year. I think the rotations are going to happen. Again, it's a long season, but at wide receiver, again, West Virginia completed the fewest passes for a season in 2023 that it had since 2007, when we were talking about a Rich Rodriguez read option 60% run type of offense. So these wide receivers are chomping at the bit for targets. So Garrett Green has to have steady rapport with at least 3 wide receivers. Already does, I feel like, with Cole Taylor. It's getting better. And then, who else is going to get added to that loop? Linebacker, I thought this was interesting listening to Mike Kazaza and Chris Anderson's show about fall camp earlier this morning, and they were talking about the linebackers and all the injuries. You talk about Trey Lathan, talk about Josiah Trotter. Yes, I mean, kind of, wasn't necessarily the first thing into my mind. I feel like with today's modern medicine and the way players are able to bounce back, especially when players' bodies are more pliable at 18 to 22 than they are in the NFL. Yes, you have some superhuman freaks like Adrian Peterson who can come back in fewer than 9 months from an ACL tear, but necessarily, I feel like I don't have any hesitations with seeing Trey Lathan get the same kind of workload that he was going to get in 2023 before that fibula and tibia tear or breaks. So at linebacker, is it going to be at Trey Lathan and then a rotation of Reed Carrico and Caden Bowser at middle? Are we talking about Tyron Bradley for sure getting the first team reps at outside linebacker? How much is Ty French going to be used? Is it only pass rushing, third and long type of situations? And then on the outside, is it Trotter, or who's going to win that battle between him and Ben Cutter? So there's 6, maybe 7 guys potentially vying for 3 spots. Who are those best 3? How will those reps be broken down? At cat safety, this was the one that just floored me come Big 12 Media Day whenever we got to see the first look at the on-paper depth chart between Kokora Tarnu and Josiah Jackson, who really didn't play at all in 2023, yet he's going to be a guy who's a starter out of your 11. Again, we're not going to a 3-4 with 4 true linebackers type of defensive schematics, Carson. No, we can't do that. No, we got to start Kokora Tarnu, who is at Jacksonville State, or Josiah Jackson, who has had a cup of coffee in Morgantown. So I'm very curious. I know that many fans, media alike, had trepidation about the outside linebacker not knowing what Trey Lathan was going to bring to the table into preseason. I'm more worried about this cat safety position than I am about that, much more. So floored by that, even though maybe this player can be shielded around with an fourth year Aubrey Burks, who's going to play like a man out of his own mind, and then Jaheim Joseph or Anthony Wilson, who was a third on the team in tackles and a thumper. Maybe not the best because of his diminutive size in coverage against bigger wide receivers or tight ends, but man, he'll hit you. He will hit you, and he'll make plays on the ball. So got no worries about Anthony Wilson. And then the 1 and 2 corners. Is Garnet Hollis Jr. the guy? Is he going to be the heir apparent to Beanie Bishop? Completely different players, I feel like, size and stature. But can he be a lockdown number 1 corner that West Virginia can trust against McMillan at Arizona, or Grimm at Kansas, or any of their really top 3, or Rashad Owens, Brennan Presley at Oklahoma State? Can we trust him to be that lockdown corner? And Aiden Garnes on the other side. If Aiden Garnes can run as fast as E.J. Horton, apparently, that's great. Wow. Awesome. He's got the speed. He played at the FCS level at Duquesne. So, awesome. Think they found perhaps a gem. So now go out there and prove it. And why we need to be West Virginia, don't want to be saying we all the time, needs a fast start to the season. I will reiterate it for the 1,000th time. 5 teams probably who will be ranked come when the AP poll releases that West Virginia will play before Halloween. We will know about this season before Halloween. So it's going to go fast. It's going to accelerate. Once Penn State happens, there is no, easy game on the schedule come Halloween or beyond when we get to Cincinnati on the road. Albany, I know West Virginia's going to win that game. I'll already mark that down as a victory. But you hear that they played in the, FCS national semifinals this past year. Is it ugly into the second quarter, into the third quarter? And West Virginia pulls away. Perhaps you're playing the Kitties up at Acrisure Stadium this year. I remember what happened in 2022. So there is no easy win on the schedule. You have to have urgency. Have to. From the opening kickoff against Penn State, this entire year, there is no let's work the clock and hope and pray that our defense is able to pull us out, like West Virginia tried to do for the first 6 games of the season this past year. You cannot do that. It is fight fire with fire, full guns blazing. So these starters have to be locked and loaded and ready to go. My second point, and kind of in that same vein, especially offensively, explosive plays and red zone offense, and I'm really thankful that Neal Brown talked about this in his press conference today, because I think this is a very critical, important point. Kind of like looking into more of the specifics of the offense. In 2023, West Virginia was tied for 22nd in the nation in red zone scoring opportunities at 58 of any FBS team, tied with the likes of Ole Miss, SMU, UNLV, so other high-powered offenses nationally. They scored in an 85% clip, 35 touchdowns, 14 field goals. Michael Hayes missed 4 kicks. All of them, high degree of difficulty. But West Virginia was 68th in the nation in that conversion percentage. So if West Virginia, and you have the likes of being as good as Penn State was a year ago offensively, 4th in the nation at 95% with 49 touchdowns and 12 field goals made. And Penn State's getting, crushed, at least Drew Aller is, from the national media. I feel like this offseason, since the end of, the Peach Bowl that they played against Ole Miss, no one believes in Drew Aller, but that was an offense that had 49 touchdowns and scored in the red zone at a 95% clip. I'll take that for efficiency any day of the week. Second point, according to collegefootballstats.com, in 2023, West Virginia was tied for 29th in FBS in explosive plays. Those are in the likings of 20-plus yards or more, or 30 yards or more on any given offensive play. Now, this was behind the likes of teams like Central Florida, Arizona, Kansas. Sorry, I had KU written down, not UK. And we're tied with Iowa State. So, those are good. That's good. That truly were. And from explosive plays, especially because of the way it rebounded in the last 6 games. How can West Virginia be even more explosive? Unleashing Jaheim White early. Using him more so rather than, he was really kind of saved on the shelf, not ready, quote unquote, according to Neal Brown, through 6 games. Unleash him. Let him work right there alongside C.J. Donaldson, game in and game out, and ride the hot hand. And then, of course, Garrett Green developing kind of rapport that he was late in the season with Hudson Clement. I think throughout the entire season, the rapport he had with Cole Taylor and also Traylon Ray. So how quickly will that develop with Jaden Bray and Justin Robinson? To be determined. But, keep that downfield passing, develop in the mid to short range tossing, and also unleash Jaheim White. Let him hit the outside, and he's going to burn one for you. So if you continue to just beat Grand, a.k.a. C.J. Donaldson, C4, beat him first down, second down, or, however the game flow works, picks you up 4, 5, 6, setting up those second and third and shorts, boom, Jaheim White's going to hit one for the big one. So that's where, and then throw the ball downfield. So next point, also and a part of being more explosive that's going to segue into my third point, are the return game. West Virginia's kickoff return was not very good last year. No touchdowns. So, 86th in FBS last year at 19 yards per return. You need some speed back there. Love you, Preston Fox. Love you, Hudson Clement. But give me a Jaheim White back there. Give me a Rodney Gallagher. Or if you go by the fastest man on the field, according to EA Sports College Football 25, you have Day Farmer. So who among that core is going to get onto the field, get those opportunities, and can they, bust a big one? That would be huge, because West Virginia did not get that in 2023. I know Jaheim White kind of came on late into the season at kick return, wasn't listed on the Big 12 Media Day too deep at that position. He should be. Should be on one side, put Rodney Gallagher or Day Farmer, whoever plays veteran training camp, and those should be your two corners, kick returners. I'm fine with Preston Fox. I get Neal Brown's philosophy. I understand punting in college football. Is they do not punt. Punters don't punt the ball far enough to allow, the coverage units get down the field so fast that there's nothing you can do for the most part other than just fair catch it. Unless you have, a terrible direction with your punt coverage unit and getting to the ball at the right, angles. That's where UNC messed up in the Duke's Mayo Bowl and allowed the Beanie Bishop return for a touchdown. But most of the teams West Virginia's played, I feel like in recent memory, all that Neal Brown's really looking for is someone who can come up with fair catches. Or if they do a return, if they can get 8 yards, that's great. And 8 yards doesn't seem like a lot. But because of the way punting is in college football, that's enough. That's all you ask for. So I don't know necessarily if you need to risk it if you believe in Preston Fox's ability to catch punts. The coverage unit on kickoff, I still have heartburn thinking about those 2 returns given up to Richard Reese of Baylor in the final game of the regular season. That was embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. And we can't forget Matthew Golden's 100-yard kickoff return that opened the scoring for Houston in a loss. So, inexcusable. I think that Jeff Coons' position as special teams coordinator is very much on the hot seat, masked by the ability to make kicks by Michael Hayes, and Ollie Strong's an awesome punter. But these coverage units cannot be as porous as they were on kickoff coverage as last year. Either boot the ball to the back of the end zone so returners don't have any ability to bring it back, or if they do, tackle them, hit them, do not give up holes. I don't want to get into, my feelings, I guess, on Lance Dixon, but in that play on that Matthew Golden allowed kickoff, you can go back to my video after the reaction of the Houston game to watch that. But guys who are out there are going to be physical, know their assignments, and make plays. Next thing, fourth, turnovers. How many dropped interceptions did West Virginia have early in the year last year? I didn't necessarily keep count of that stat. But still, just 16 turnovers gained for the entire season. That was tied for 83rd in FBS. Now, that was much up from their abysmal 2022 season. So, improvement, you got to give them credit for that, but still a lot of ways to go in that department. If the pass defense doesn't improve statistically, And the way to do that is through a solid pass rush, sending pass rushers after opposing quarterbacks to, get them to throw off balance, hand in their face, be pressured, or get sacks, Jordan Leslie, like he did in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Then, they're going to have to be bailed out by turnovers in this bend but don't break defense. And like you can think back to the UCF game, turnovers saved that game, won that game. Now some turnovers were, I can think the Oklahoma State game comes first and foremost to mind for me of turnovers impacting the game. But West Virginia was very conservative, kept control of turnovers lost. I feel like from an offensive side of the ball, improvement on the defensive side of the ball. Can they equal what they did last year or do better? I think you can work on that in your defensive back drills all over the field. It also always comes down to talent. Last thing I'll say, and then I'll end this video, I feel like right at 45, trick plays. I can't believe I'm saying this of all the things to talk about in development, offense, defense, special teams, and getting ready for fall camp, but you're not in the meat of the heart of the season just yet. I think this is where an opportunity, and you might have worked on this a little bit in spring ball. I just have thoughts back, flashbacks to that Leighton Bechtel fake field goal run in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. The margin of victory, margin for error, however you want to call it, glass half full, glass half empty, for this 2024 West Virginia team is going to be so small. So small, y'all. I'm telling you. If they beat Penn State, it's not going to be any sort of a blowout. Absolutely not. How many of these games in the Big 12 do you think are going to be blowouts? I think all but, let me say, I think they can beat Pitt by double digits. I think they can beat Cincinnati by double digits. And I think they could beat Baylor by double digits. But all the rest of their games, Albany, I'm not including Albany, could come down to one possession. So what can make or break in one possession games? Things that are completely unexpected. Now, I talked about in my previous video, creative play calling. And Neal Brown did that so much better, combined with his aggression to go for it on fourth downs in 2023 than he had ever before. Can you do something else on top of that? They tried that a few times. I go back to the play. They brought in Nico Marchiol for a play for an oft injured for a one play Garrett Green. Fumble to Jalen Anderson, or just really a botched. You can think back to the Penn State game. They're doing ring around the Rosie in the backfield before the snap, or they did one direct snap to Nico Marchiol for one play. What can you do that is out of the norm, out of traditional type of offense, even in today's world of the RPO where nothing is traditional, that can be innovative and just makes you say wow. Neal Brown does a lot of window dressing. We see this every single game, multiple motions by multiple players at different segments. But what more? I don't know if necessarily C.J. Donaldson or even Jaheim White are going to go, wildcat quarterback, or even if that works in today's college football anymore. But what can you do from a trick play perspective? Special teams, offense, you can't really defensively, for a 2-point conversion, for fourth down conversion, third down conversion, or just, you seem like you've been shown a lot of the same looks and teams are picking up on some things, but you hit them with, a pass to a lineman. Can you stretch Wyatt Milam out into a screen pass or something? And I can think back to when was it? Texas in 2019, I think it was. They strung out their left tackle, Sam Cosme, or I might have the name wrong on there. Boom. And they got a touchdown out of it. And you're just like, holy crap, how you tackling some 350-pound player? But that's what I'm talking about. Little things like that might make the difference in winning a ball game. We see this from Big 12 opponents all the time, and I'm sure you're like me when I'm talking about this topic, think, oh yeah, I do remember that. Oh yeah, why can't West Virginia necessarily do that? So is it one play? Is it two plays? What can West Virginia work on? It's outside the norm. Call it a trick play if you want to. That is going to make us say, aha, because you have a veteran group to be able to do so. So do it. So I'm fired up. I think you can tell by this. Right there, about 45 minutes, I figured. So I got a lot of thoughts, got a lot of feelings. I'm going to be monitoring the situation, social media and that. For what happens during fall camp, if there's something necessarily news to break, or talk about whenever the time comes over the next couple of weeks, I will do so. But I definitely want to come back. I want to give you some of my predictions because I know that's what everybody loves to talk about this time of the year. Make some predictions, make some some on paper stuff about how offensive, defensively, and then game by game situation. So I want to do that before we get into the Penn State game because can't wait for that week leading up to August 31st where we can talk about Nittany Lions, Mountaineers, and the 2024 season. So thanks for tuning in, y'all. Let's go. Hail West Virginia. Love to have you as a subscriber to my channel for this season. We have a lot of fun. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it. So see you later.